Have you ever wondered how a country facing one of the world's toughest immigration challenges finally took control? For years, Mexico's southern border has been overwhelmed. Thousands of desperate families, mothers holding their children, young men and women fleeing poverty and violence, all hoping for a better life. The scenes were heart-wrenching, chaotic, and at times, downright heartbreaking. Children sleeping on concrete floors, families walking for days under the scorching sun, and countless lives at risk. But now, something has changed. Mexico has taken bold, decisive action, and it may have finally solved its immigration crisis. Today, we're going to take you step by step through the journey, the struggles, the triumphs, and the lives that have been forever changed. Segment 1: The Immigration Challenge. For decades, Mexico has been the gateway for thousands of migrants from Central America, including Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. They flee extreme poverty, gang violence, political instability, and natural disasters, seeking safety and opportunity in Mexico or further north toward the United States. The migration numbers were staggering. Reports indicate over 500,000 people attempted to cross Mexico annually, many of them traveling in dangerous conditions. Migrants walked through jungles, rivers, and deserts, often facing robbery, abuse, and exploitation. Human trafficking networks took advantage of desperate families, demanding money or forcing migrants into labor and other horrific situations. Mexico's border towns were overwhelmed. Shelters lacked space, food, and basic medical care. Local governments struggled to maintain order, and tensions rose between residents and newcomers. International organizations criticized the lack of support, while domestic citizens worried about safety, jobs, and infrastructure strain. Segment 2: The human stories behind the crisis. Numbers alone cannot convey the human suffering. Imagine a mother carrying her 2-year-old child, walking for days without proper food or water. Imagine teenagers leaving everything behind, their homes, schools, friends, facing danger in unknown territory. Families were often separated, creating deep emotional scars. Take the story of Rosa, a young mother from Honduras. She walked over 200 miles through dangerous terrain, often resting only on the ground, with her toddler clinging to her side. She faced rainstorms, wild animals, and moments of sheer desperation. Without proper border management, families like hers were left vulnerable to violence and exploitation. These human stories were the faces behind the crisis, each one a reminder that this wasn't just about politics, statistics, or news headlines. It was about real lives, real struggles, and real hope. Segment 3: Mexico takes strategic action. The turning point came when the Mexican government implemented a multi-pronged approach to address the crisis. Their strategy included strengthened border control. Mexico deployed additional security forces at official crossings, installed advanced monitoring technology, and cracked down on illegal trafficking routes. This reduced dangerous, unauthorized crossings and protected both citizens and migrants. Humanitarian support. Recognizing the human cost, the government established shelters with proper medical care, food, and security. Psychological support was provided for traumatized children and adults, ensuring that families could recover and move forward safely. Legal pathways and diplomacy. Mexico collaborated with neighboring countries and the United States to create legal migration pathways. Programs were introduced to allow temporary work, safe passage, and humanitarian visas, reducing the need for dangerous, irregular migration. This combination of enforcement, care, and diplomacy allowed Mexico to tackle the crisis systematically, balancing security with compassion. Segment 4: The impact on migrants. The changes were life-changing. Families no longer had to sleep on the streets. Children could attend school safely, and parents could access medical care. Dangerous crossings declined, and local communities began to regain stability. Consider Miguel, a teenager from El Salvador. Before the reforms, he faced the constant threat of robbery and assault while traveling north. Today, he is enrolled in a government-supported educational program, learning a trade, and dreaming of a future without fear. Stories like Miguel's illustrate the human success behind Mexico's policies. Segment 5: The impact on Mexican communities. Expanded local communities along Mexico's southern border experienced profound changes. For years, towns like Tapachula, Ciudad Hidalgo, and Tenosique struggled under the weight of sudden, massive influxes of migrants. Streets were crowded, public services were overtaxed, and residents faced a daily reality of chaos, uncertainty, and tension. Businesses were disrupted, schools struggled to accommodate children from migrant families, and hospitals were overwhelmed with urgent cases. With the new government strategy in place, the transformation was remarkable. Overwhelmed shelters regained order, migrants were guided into structured programs, and public services could operate effectively without constant strain. Local businesses, once hesitant to hire or serve migrant families due to unpredictability, began to see stability. Markets, transport systems, and community centers started functioning more smoothly, fostering a sense of normalcy for everyone. Perhaps most importantly, citizens began to see migrants not as a burden, but as individuals participating in legal, structured, and humanitarian programs. Trust in government leadership increased, as people realized the authorities were not just enforcing laws, they were managing the situation humanely and effectively. Communities started to thrive again, and residents noticed the difference in subtle but meaningful ways. Children could play safely in public spaces, hospitals could treat patients promptly, and local governments could plan long-term projects without constant disruption. This delicate balance between law enforcement and compassion became a model for other countries grappling with migration challenges. Segment 6. Statistics, Trends, and Human Impact. Expanded numbers tell a story, but behind every statistic is a human life. Since implementing stricter enforcement combined with humanitarian support, Mexico reported a 40% decrease in irregular crossings in key southern border states. This meant fewer people facing dangerous treks through rivers, jungles, and deserts. Over 150,000 migrants were successfully enrolled in legal pathways, allowing them to live, work, and study safely in Mexico. This was not just bureaucracy, it was real people finding hope, security, and opportunity. Reports indicate trafficking incidents in monitored areas dropped dramatically, giving families a fighting chance to survive their journeys safely. Consider the story of Javier, a young man from Guatemala. Before these programs, he was forced to hide and risk dangerous routes, often hungry and exhausted. Now, enrolled in a legal pathway, he works at a community project in southern Mexico, receives medical care, and sends money back home to support his family. Stories like Javier's demonstrate the human significance behind the statistics: lives saved, trauma reduced, and futures rebuilt. These statistics reflect more than government efficiency. They represent millions of hours of suffering prevented, families reunited, and children who can finally sleep safely at night. Segment 7. Challenges and Continuing Struggles. No solution is perfect, and Mexico still faces challenges. Migration pressures persist, particularly during periods of political instability or natural disasters in neighboring countries. Some informal crossings continue despite increased border security, and enforcement can sometimes appear harsh or selective. Critics argue that migrants in legal limbo face uncertainty, sometimes waiting months for official approval or struggling to access proper resources. Additionally, managing such a massive and complex humanitarian operation requires constant adaptation, training, and funding. Yet, the overall strategy demonstrates that systematic planning, human-focused policies, and regional cooperation can turn a seemingly impossible crisis into a manageable challenge. Mexico's approach shows the world that even large-scale migration crises are solvable when governments act decisively, compassionately, and strategically. Segment 8. Lessons for the World. Mexico's experience offers powerful lessons for countries across the globe. Balance is essential. Borders can be secure without sacrificing compassion. Enforcement and humanity can coexist when policies are thoughtful and intentional. Collaboration is key. Working with neighboring countries, international organizations, and local communities creates a network of support that makes solutions sustainable. Human stories must drive policy. Ignoring the human element leads to failure. Policies that prioritize the lives, safety, and dignity of migrants achieve better outcomes than punitive-only approaches. Long-term planning matters. A temporary fix is not enough. Infrastructure, social programs, legal pathways, and diplomatic strategies must all work in harmony. Countries in Europe, the Americas, and beyond can study Mexico's blueprint. From Greece to Brazil, nations facing migration crises now have an example of how to combine enforcement, care, and diplomacy to save lives while maintaining order. Segment 9. Conclusion. Emotional wrap-up. When we say Mexico has solved its immigration crisis, we mean it has taken control in a way that protects both citizens and vulnerable migrants. Children who once slept on the streets now attend school, learning and playing in safe environments. Families previously separated by chaos are reunited in shelters and communities. Teenagers like Miguel, once vulnerable and fearful, now dream of stable futures. Mothers like Rosa, exhausted and terrified, finally rest safely with their children. This is a story of courage, leadership, and decisive action rooted in compassion. It's a reminder that even in the most challenging situations, humanity and governance can come together to create real change. Every life saved, every child educated, every family reunited is proof that crises can be solved, not with indifference, but with determination and empathy. Mexico's approach is not just a government achievement, it's a story of hope, resilience, and the power of strategic, humane leadership. If this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you hope, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts. Do you believe other countries can replicate Mexico's approach? What lessons should the world learn from this remarkable transformation? And remember, true change happens when we care about people. Not just politics, not just borders, but the lives of real men, women, and children who deserve safety, dignity, and hope.